Well, each week we talk to the New York Post columnist Miranda Devine about the latest in America. Before we go to Miranda, Donald Trump's eldest son was magnificent today. Donald Trump Jr. spoke at the opening night of the Republican National Convention. He was on fire. Trump Jr. rightly used his address to the convention to question what the hell Joe Biden has achieved during his 47 years in Washington. The answer, as my old man would say, would be 2/5 of bugger all. Trump Jr. called Biden the Lock Ness Monster of the Washington swamp. It was a brilliant assessment. He then went on to say this.
Joe Biden and the radical left are now coming for our freedom of speech. They want to bully us into submission. If they get their way, it will no longer be the silent majority. It will be the silenced majority.
Yeah, it's extraordinary stuff, isn't it? I mean, Trump holds China, he says, indeed, and the world to account. Well, on police, listen to Trump Jr. talking about the police.
We cannot lose sight of the fact that our police are American heroes. They deserve our deepest appreciation. Because no matter what the Democrats say, you and I both know when we dial 911, we don't want it going to voicemail. So defunding the police is not an option.
How impressive is this bloke? Fancy someone talking about defunding the police. Only a left-wing lunatic could think of that. You can see, though, how this bloke has become the top Republican fundraiser. Let's go to Miranda now with the US report. Miranda, the National Convention, the Republican National Convention, lots of energy, lots of positivity.
Yes, it was such a contrast to the Democrats' doom and gloom fest last week. It was very slickly produced. Donald Trump was minutely involved in the details, and also there was a former producer from The Celebrity Apprentice involved. So the whole thing had a real Hollywood feel, and it was very patriotic, very optimistic, a lot of God bless these United States, and some really important people were speaking. I mean, there were everybody from doctors and nurses and, firefighters and police officers who were seen in the White House with the president as he paid tribute to them. And then there were a lot of black people, including the only black Republican senator who gave an absolutely stirring final speech in which he talked about his grandfather who grew up in the segregated South. And he said, we went, our family, from cotton to Congress, and that's proof of what a wonderful country this is.
Wonderful.
It was a very optimistic, hopeful
Well, Miranda,
start.
this Donald Trump Jr., just let our viewers listen to this. This is the start of Donald Trump Jr.'s speech. Listen to this.
Just a few short months ago, we were seeing the American dream become a reality for more of our citizens than ever before. The greatest prolonged economic expansion in American history, the lowest unemployment rate in nearly 50 years, the lowest unemployment rates ever for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, women, and pretty much every other demographic group. And then, courtesy of the Chinese Communist Party, the virus struck. The president quickly took action and shut down travel from China. Joe Biden and his Democrat allies called my father a racist and a xenophobe for doing it. They put political correctness ahead of the safety and security of the American people.
It's outstanding stuff, Miranda. But what about the girlfriend, Miranda, Kimberly Guilfoyle? What?
Well, she was pretty on fire, I must say, and she was pretty exercised, wasn't she? She was virtually
Absolutely.
shouting. But,
she's leading.
The great thing.
Yeah, she's leading the Republican Party's fundraising team, isn't she?
Yes, look, she's a real dynamo. I don't know if you know, but she previously was married to Gavin Newsom, who's the very left-wing progressive Democrat governor of California. But I was going to say about Donald Trump Jr., I interviewed him earlier this year in New Hampshire, and he's a very impressive person, not just publicly, but in person. And he talked a lot about his mother, of course, Donald Trump's first wife, who was, from, like his current wife, was from the, Eastern Bloc, grew up in communism, and all those Trump children have taken that on board. They understand communism. They went back to those countries when they were children out for the summer, and they know they can smell it a mile off. And this is why they are so strong on smelling out the Democrat socialism. And Joe Biden pretends to be a moderate. He was right on board with the defund the police program, even though he's now changing his tune. And he signed up to all of Bernie Sanders' left-wing manifesto. So he's an empty shell, we all know. But it's incredible that the Democrats in America have leapt so far to the left.
Just a quick one before you go. Are the polls moving?
They are, yes, and particularly in the battleground states, they're certainly tightening. I mean, if you went by the polls and the election was tomorrow, the smart money is saying that Donald Trump doesn't win. But, the reality is that America is on fire. In the streets in Democrat-run cities are alive with looters and rioters and violent thugs. That is really forcing people into President Trump's hands because he's the only one promising law and order.
Absolutely. And I love that positivity. And he's recited there, the son recited the achievements. Fantastic stuff. Love talking to you, Miranda. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Alan.